White worker racism, kill black people. Racism towards your own kind of, you know. Just answer that question. Fuck you, walking away. You know what? White lives, they matter too. That's all I'm saying.
Black lives
White lives matter too.
Black lives matter.
White lives matter too.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Fuck off. White lives matter.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Black lives matter.
You're just angry because you're getting cuffed, bro.
We don't argue with fools. Let them do his thing. It's cool.
Okay, I'm going to ask people to gather round. Firstly,
I won't hold one, but I'll film it if you want it filmed.
Sure. We're out. My name's Naila Ashraf. I'm from Stand Up to Racism.
Cheers.
We're here because, as many people will know, a young man, a 24-year-old man, black man, was shot dead by the police a couple of weeks ago. He was unarmed. They forcibly stopped his car, surrounded his car, and then shot him dead. And the family, quite rightly, are now demanding answers from the police. We want to understand what happened. And it's quite clear that we have very little faith in the police. It's important to say, this is not the only time a black man has lost his life at the hands of the police. He's the latest of a long list of black men, and actually women as well, who've lost their lives at the hands of the police. And at no time in Britain has a police officer been prosecuted for that. So it's really important that rather than waiting 9 months, because that's what they said, it's going to take 9 months for the report to be published, we are out demanding answers. Let's be very clear, the police that day were wearing body cameras. So we know what happened. You only need to watch the videos to know what happened, but they're refusing to allow the family to see those videos. They have said that they will show some of them, edited versions of those videos. And so today the family have called a National Day of Action. So we're out here today in support of the family, demanding answers from the police, and we're part of a whole host of events that are taking place across the country. It is really important to say that we are part of a national network of people demanding justice for Chris Kaba, and we'll continue to demand justice until we get answers, and until we get justice as well. Let's be very clear, we want some real justice. When we can see that, we can get that. We've seen recently a police officer in America, first time ever, being found guilty of the murder of George Floyd, of another black man. And it goes to show that when we come out, we stand together in solidarity, black and white people demanding change, we can see some real results. And that's what we're going to do here as well. Because we're really clear, all through the whole Black Lives Matter movement, which is still continuing, and we are part of that movement, we have always said that while we stand in solidarity with George Floyd and his family, we also recognise that the problem of racism and racist policing of black people is a problem here in Britain as well, and that's why we're out today. This is part of that international struggle. The movement for change and movement for fighting racism is an international movement, and that's why we are here. This is continuing that same movement, so I'm really glad that we're out today, and we'll continue to come out and demand change. So what I'm going to do is, I know there are a couple of people here who would like to say a few words, and we're going to open up the mic, but really I think today is about reminding people, Black Lives Matter!
Black lives matter.
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 Thanks very much. Say his name!
Chris Kaba.
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 No justice!
No peace.
No racist
Police.
No justice!
No peace.
No racist
Police.
No justice!
No peace.
No racist
Police.
So it's amazing to see more people here today. I was here last week and it's very, very, very important that we send solidarity by being there on the streets, not just about sharing things on social media, but remembering that this is a human being, just like me and you, a 24-year-old man, 24 years young. It's no age to die, and he got killed at the hands of the people who are supposed to protect us. He got shot and murdered by the racist Met Police. When I say racist, that's not a controversial statement. It's not an opinion. It's a fact that they are systemically a racist organisation. They've proved that they're institutionally racist. They've come out and admitted that the GMP and the Met Police are institutionally racist, and they killed an innocent, unarmed black man. And it's happening far too often. One thing that we have to remember is justice won't be given. The police don't want to give us justice. Justice has to be taken. And the only way we can take it is by public pressure, by holding them to account, by being on the streets regularly, and by pressing those pressure points. When George Floyd was killed, the officer who killed him would never have got sentenced to murder if it wasn't for the worldwide movement, if it wasn't for the protests, if it wasn't for the countless campaigning that was happening across the world. And the same thing has to happen here with Chris Kaba. Last week it was very apparent to me that more people care about the death of a 96-year-old queen than they do of a 24-year-old black man who was shot and unarmed by a police officer. So we've got a long, long way to go, but justice has to be served, and we can only do that by being here in the streets. So I commend everyone for being here. Another thing I just want to quickly read out is the demands that the family have made. So they've already made some pride demands. They wanted a suspension, and they've got that. They wanted a time frame until the decision, and they've got that. And they wanted the body cam footage, and they've got that. So they've been really successful so far, and they're only 2 weeks into the campaign. The new demands are: did the officer know that it was Chris in the car, or were they simply following a suspect vehicle? The suspended officer must be interviewed under caution without delay, and for the family to be kept informed of this. And there should be a charging decision within weeks, not months. That is very, very crucial. Another thing I want to say is there is a network, like Naila said, there's a network of anti-racists and people who care around the country. So there's protests right now in Oxford, Brighton, Newcastle, Norwich, Cambridge, Northampton, Chesterfield, Coventry and Nottingham. So it's amazing to see that network around the UK of people who care, and this is the only way we can change things, by staying connected. And the final thing I want to end on, which is quite grim: the world will keep spinning. We will continue to go about our lives, we'll continue to go back to work, to college, university, live our lives, see our family, see our friends, but Chris Kaba's life is over, and his family will have to live with that for the rest of their life. So although the world will keep spinning, we have to just keep it in front of our brains. We have to keep our finger on the pressure points, because that's the only way there'll be a landmark victory. Dalian Atkinson was a professional footballer. He got kicked in his head by a police officer and he got killed, and that officer has now gone to jail. But that only happened in 2020, years after the actual crime. Why did it happen in 2020? Because it was a worldwide movement, because there was a real an appetite for it on the street. So we have to stay here, keep doing this, keep turning up, and yeah, big up yourselves. No justice, no peace.
As always, he shoots right to the heart of what is the issue here. I'm Elizabeth Cameron. I'm reminded to say the title that brings me here. I'm a member of the community just like you, but I'm here as chair of GM Race Equality Panel. And sometimes in that role, it's really, really hard to be able to sit with institutions who you feel are being, what else can I say? Racist. I have to use that word because the level of systemic, disproportionate treatment for black people is so invasive to our lives that we're not having the same lives as everyone else. So I do say to the young gentleman who passed us before, shouting White Lives Matter, that actually we know that. We already believe that. We live our life according to that. We fashion ourselves in our workplaces, in our communities, knowing that, respecting that, from teachers to doctors to you name it. You know, we're in the minority, not globally, I stress, but we know where we are. What we're talking about here is levelling up this playing field to notice us too. So when we say Black Black Lives Matter, it's like, but do they? You know, answer that question yourself. You know, do they? Would this be the level of people at a protest? And I thank every single face that I can see out here, let me tell you, because I'm grateful to you for being here, because I know you're not asleep. You have seen what's happened here. You know how wrong it is. And you have come out to show some form of solidarity to say, this isn't acceptable for me. This isn't acceptable in a society I want to live in. And that's all that matters. And that means it doesn't matter if you're green or purple or yellow. You come out and say something about that. It's not acceptable. So for me, yes, I sit down. My task is to sit down with people like the Chief Inspector and the Chief Constable and all the bodies that stand to do policing and criminal justice. And when we see yet another person dead in the street, ask the questions. Can this happen here in Manchester? And not be satisfied with the fact that we quickly shift it over into it happened in London, it happened in America, it's not happening here. No, we say if it could happen there, it could happen here. If it could happen there, it can happen anywhere. And if we've got the systems that uphold this divisive way of treating people, that put us apart from one another and don't let us join a common theme of caring that somebody has been gunned down, I'm going to say it again, gunned down, an innocent person gunned down in the street. Keep saying it in your head. Would that be okay for you? Are you expecting to be gunned down in the street today? But my chances are higher, and his chances are increasingly more higher. So that's the issue. That's something we've got to do something about. And we do it together by tackling all forms of it. I will never not be in a protest exercising my, I believe, human right to be able to protest against something which is not okay for me. I want my grandson to be able to live and walk these streets. I don't want to think he is not safe just because, no, like he doesn't have to do anything, not because he's a criminal, not because he's a bad boy, not because he knows gangs, not because he's even sent text messages, just because he walked the street. So that's the level that we're at now, ensuring that that cannot be the case here. And until I know that is not the case here, you'll see me on these streets, and I hope you're going to be here to join me. Justice for Chris Kaba. Justice for Chris Kaba.
Justice for Chris Kaba.
Justice for Chris Kaba.
Justice for Chris Kaba.
Justice for Chris Kaba.
Justice for Chris Kaba.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No racist police.
I ask this question about time and time again every time there's a demonstration. And I'm going to invite Reno to say a few words of unison. And it is really important to say that it's great that we're out here today, but a lot of the strength of the anti-racist movement, and in particular Stand Up to Racism, comes from the work that we do and the solidarity we get and the organisation behind the trade union movement. So I'm going to invite Reno to say a few words of unison.
Thank you. I'm Brina Wood, Joint Deputy Convener of Unison North West Region. And I want to thank the organisers for giving us the opportunity to be here today and extend our solidarity. And the first thing I want to say is, race and class cannot be divided. This is absolutely a class issue. And that is why we stand together in solidarity, black and white members of our community. Because we know only too well how the establishment want to split us and divide us, so that they want us to turn a blind eye to the policies they set, to the legislation they set that discriminates us against us, that imposes poverty on us, that willingly accepts discrimination in all forms. I mean, the fact is, black people, black communities, when young black men are sentenced, they get higher sentences than white people, white young men committing the same kind of offence. It's gone on for a very long time. And respect to the movement, the Black Lives Movement, that gave us the opportunity to have the difficult conversations. I've worked alongside many people, quite decent people, but in a coffee break chat, say something that's actually quite offensive. And it gives us the opportunity to say, I'm offended and this is why. I want to have that difficult conversation with you. The state has this immigration nationality laws that labels black people as a problem that have to be controlled. And what everyone seems to forget, I'm here, I'm Mancunian, born and bred, proud of it. Why am I here? Because of colonialism, because of imperialism. My parents, your parents were invited to come to the motherland and make a contribution. Our countries were robbed. Just look at the crowns and the crown jewels. What countries did they come from? Our countries. So England goes, we need you, come here. And then we're here. We have families, we have children. And now they say, there's too many of you. You need to be controlled. You are a problem. We are not a problem. The establishment, the system, colonialism, imperialism, that is the problem. And I'm proud that the trade union movement accepts fighting racism is absolutely a trade union issue. So all of you, have a conversation with your employers. Do you have equality policies? What does it do about dealing with racism in the workplace? Because all of these things are absolutely linked. They are linked to the attitude. The common parlance is unconscious. I don't think people are, I think they consciously know when they're being racist. But all these things matter. It gives people, white people in positions of power like the police, it gives them confidence because they know they're not being held accountable, because they don't get prosecuted. They don't get held to account like we do, like our communities do. But all these things that happen, they are linked. And together we can share our skills, our enthusiasm, our commitment for fighting for justice, especially for the black community, but equality and justice in an equitable way for all of us in our communities. Justice for Chris Kaba!
Justice for Chris Kaba!
Say his name!
Chris Kaba!
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Say his name!
Chris Kaba!
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 And I think it is so important we do say his name because we want to make sure everyone knows his name and no one forgets that this is, like I said, is another name on a long list of, you know, people that have been killed at the hands of the police. And we will keep fighting. Today is the start of that. Let's be very, very clear. The fact that the family put out the call for everyone to come out this weekend is just the start of the movement in support of Chris Kaba and his family. So let's say it loud and let's say it very clear. Black Lives Matter!
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 No justice!
No peace!
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 Say his name!
Chris Kaba!
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 Okay, thanks very much. And I'm going to open up. I know there's a couple of people that do want to speak. Do you want to?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles. I'm from Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. I just want to say a few words. So Chris Kaba is only the latest in a long line of black people who have been killed by the British police. British police are a racist police. In England and Wales since 1990, there have been 1,833 deaths in custody following contact with the police. Black people make up 3% of the population, but 8% of these deaths. And this doesn't include deaths in custody in immigration detention centers or in prisons. Black and Asian people are far more likely to be stopped and searched by the police. They're far more likely to be remanded in custody when on trial. As someone has already said, they receive longer sentences on average, and they are more frequently detained under the Mental Health Act. Overall, ethnic minorities account for 14% of the population of England and Wales, but 27% of its prisoners. So this gives you an idea of the targeting of ethnic minorities by the entire criminal justice system, which is totally racist. Again, this doesn't include those locked up in Britain's immigration detention centres, where prison abuse from guards is rife. Britain's racialised minorities have lower average wages. They work disproportionately in lower paid jobs, in insecure jobs, higher rates of homelessness and overcrowded housing, higher rates of long-term illness and disability. And this toxic mix contributed to black people being 4 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than white people. Immigration. In modern times, Britain has welcomed settlers because of the need for cheap labour for the capitalist economy. People from the Caribbean and from South Asia, immigrants in the 60s, and 500,000 have come from Eastern Europe in recent times. They come to work in Britain at or below minimum wage, in temporary jobs with no holiday pay, with no sick pay. Overseas labour is the backbone of the NHS, where 50% of workers are migrants. And even when they are well paid, such workers are cheap because Britain has not paid for their training in the countries that they come from. The countries they came from paid for their training. So overall, those workers are cheap labour, and it allows the British to provide healthcare, but at a cheaper rate. So immigrant workers form an international reserve army of labour that can be brought into work for low pay during an economic boom time, and then they can be kicked out when capitalism goes into crisis. Immigration controls and the racist immigration laws have forced many migrants in Britain into extremely exploitative conditions. If you're afraid of being deported, then you're going to take any job that's on offer. Recent immigration laws have further restricted legal access to housing, to healthcare, and other areas of everyday life, isolating migrants from other workers, stripping them of their rights at a time when wages, welfare payments, and services are being cut for everybody except the rich. This is a very important point. Successive Labour and Tory governments have introduced racist immigration, asylum, and nationality acts. And these laws are institutionalized racism. These laws form the basis of racism in society. These laws are designed to refuse and deport people who are seeking asylum from wars, poverty, and conflict that is fueled by British plunder. Remember, asylum seekers are not allowed to work. Teachers and healthcare workers are actually encouraged to spy and report on pupils and patients. Dawn raids, deportations, and detentions actually tear families apart, as well as costing hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds. And then there's also the prevent laws, which are actually targeted at the Muslim community. It's a deliberate law designed to paint Muslims as a threat. This is another racist law. This is all based on imperialist exploitation. Britain's external assets total nearly £10 trillion, 5 times the size of the domestic economy. Just imagine that. Say you've got a wage, you've got £20,000 a year wage, and yet you've got a Ferrari parked outside. But Britain's assets, 10 trillion, but its GDP is about 2 trillion. Where's it got all that money from? The returns from Britain's foreign direct investments, 9% from Africa, 13% from Asia, but about 2 to 3% from Europe. So it is exploitation. And the international debt of these poor countries continues to grow. It grew from 1.9 trillion to 6.8 trillion between 1997 and 2016. And yet at the same time, these countries repaid 9.8 trillion. So the more money they pay back in debt, the more their debt continues to increase. Britain is essentially a parasite living off the resources and the wealth of countries around the world, creating poverty, and that is why people are fleeing their countries in the first place. This is super exploitation. It is a parasitic relationship between Britain and oppressed countries, and without it, British capitalism could not survive. British state racism is inseparable from Britain's imperialist wars, such as the wars in the Middle East or in Africa. At the moment, Britain is planning to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. We're all opposed to this racist Rwanda plan, but the Rwandan government is an ally of British imperialism. Britain uses Rwanda to fight wars in Africa. Britain uses the Rwandan army to loot neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. British companies like Glencore operate in Congo, looting the country of its coltan, of its copper, and of its cobalt. So, like I said, British state racism, the stop and search, the killing of black people like Chris Kaba, the racist immigration laws, racism and discrimination in education, in healthcare, cannot be separated from British imperialist wars around the world, from its plunder through wealth, through the IMF, through debt, through the World Bank. It is inseparable from the austerity measures which are criminalizing sick and disabled people and unemployed people, with people being sanctioned before they can receive their universal credit. As Malcolm X famously put it, you can't have capitalism without racism. We must unite to resist these attacks on working class communities in Britain and stand with those resisting imperialism across the world, such as the Palestinians and the Cubans. Together we are stronger. We refuse to pay for the capitalist crisis. Fight racism, fight imperialism. Thank you.
There has been a suggestion. What we'd like to do, if people are up for it, is for all of us to take the knee. Well, people will remember that was one of the key things. It was a form of, I guess, a display of solidarity, I guess, but also a form of resistance. It's something that we continue to do. We put the knee everywhere TV for over a year. Many people across the country did it, including footballers, and we all know, attacked for doing it by the then Home Secretary, who said it was just I can't even remember what she said, it was so insignificant. It was gesture politics, that's what she called it, gesture politics. So I'm really proud to say that actually, regardless of what she said, we'll continue to take the knee, and I think it's important that we do that today. So how do people feel if we all took the knee? Yeah, and for those of us that can take the knee, I appreciate that not all of us can get down and take the knee. But yeah, if you can't take the knee, feel free to raise your wrist and your fist in solidarity. Happy Saturday, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Reverend Malika, and I'm a local interfaith minister. And wherever possible, I read out this interfaith prayer, which is for people of faith and people of no faith. As we pause in quiet reflection to offer this prayer for a peaceful world, in our individual and personal ways, we call upon the Creator who sustains us and our lives, and who inspires us to live with compassion and kindness, peace and justice. We ask for daily guidance in all of our personal relationships, in our work and play, in our community involvement, that we might model the possibility of peace in everything we say and everything we do. We pray for wisdom and compassion within the hearts and minds of all world leaders who have the power and the responsibility of making decisions that impact the presence of peace and justice. We pray for courage, dedication and integrity within the spirits of all those who work for peace around the world. We pray for all those who harbour thoughts and feelings of hatred, violence and greed, and that their hearts, minds and souls will be transformed into your likeness of compassion and kindness. We are thankful for your presence within our lives and ask for your blessings as we try to live peaceful lives and seek ways for all people to live with justice, in harmony and peace. With thanks and praise I say, Black Lives Matter. Thanks so much for that, Malika. And I do have somebody else I'm going to say a few words.
I just wanted to say that when Chris Kaba was assassinated by the British state, he was only 3 years older than me. And that this sort of state violence is the manifestation, it's the acute edge of something that people go through on a daily basis, whether it's a 60% poverty rate in the Bangladeshi community or a 30% poverty rate in the black one, or when over 60% of children who are strip searched belong to ethnic minority communities. We're talking about a structural system of injustice, something that starts when you're just, even before you're 3 years old, and that stays with you for the course of your lifetime. The death or the assassination of Chris Kaba was not some simple accident. It wasn't something that just happened out of the blue. It wasn't because of one bad apple. It was because of a rotten tree. And that same rotten tree went and uprooted somebody who meant something to so many people. That was somebody's son, that was somebody's brother, that was somebody's cousin. And unless we continue to stand up and fight, that's going to happen to so many other people. Because look at how the Daily Mail, how the corporate media portrays somebody like Chris Kaba as some sort of black criminal, as some sort of lowly rapper who doesn't care for life, who committed crimes, and somehow that means that you can dehumanize somebody else's son. We have to build our own sources of power. We have to build our own independent media. Every single one of you has something that you can add to this struggle, because for too long, whether it's blacked out squares on social media or people who only show up for one protest, I'm tired of seeing people who only want to show up when somebody's dead. What about every other day that somebody's going through that pain? What about every other day that's 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police? Because the violence is a daily thing. It's an everyday process. It's 24 hours. It's being told as a child that you have to act in a certain way because you might be gripped up against a wall and told that you don't matter, simply because of where your parents came from, because of where you came from, and because of the color of your skin. You can't hide it. You can't hide it if you're black and brown and you're in the school system. You can't hide it if you're black and brown and driving late at night because somebody's going to ask you the wrong questions. And because of his identity, he was shot and killed in the head. And remembering that violence Remembering its daily expression is incredibly important. I don't want you to forget. I don't want this to be your first and last protest. I want you to continue to show up. I want you to join the organizations that are doing the work in the community, because unless it's rooted in the community, it's just going to evaporate. And we can't have it evaporate, because every single person's life matters. And that's why we say Black Lives Matter. Because until somebody like Chris Kaba's life matters, then none of our lives really matter. And if they'll do it to Chris Kaba, they'll do it to you. And if they won't do it to you, they'll do it to your son, or to your daughter, or to your cousin. So that's why we have to get out here. It's not enough just for the optics, fam. You have to get out and do the actual work. When somebody's calling you on that platform and saying, we're out here today doing an anti-racism workshop, where are you? Because history will judge you based on what you do here today, the decisions that you take into your own personal life and into your own work life. So what you do here matters. I want you to understand that, because it's so important that it matters. Because it's on one side to have brothers, friends and family in the prison system and in the criminal justice system that picks on people based on where they come from. And it's another thing entirely to be on the other side and working from that. And that's where you need to be. You need to be on the front lines so that nobody else's son has to lose their life because of police violence, because of an institutionally racist organization. We want community control. We want democratic control. We want to abolish all systems of oppression that continue to place the burden of pain on the shoulders of just a very few. All power to the people, rest in power to Chris Kaba, and I hope you continue to push for human rights and equality for all people.
Thanks so much for that. We do need to stay connected. We absolutely need to be organised. Because let's be very honest, their side is organised. The police, the education system, the prison system, the state, it's organised to stack up against black people in this country. So as the anti-racist movement, we need to stay connected and we need to get organised. We know under this new Tory government, this new cabinet, there's going to be more racism. They're going to push their divisive policies. They have to. They want us to pay for their austerity. They want us to pay for what they've done to the economy. And they're going to use racism to divide us. They keep telling us those refugees, those migrants coming on those dinghies, terrified for their lives, with nothing but a rucksack if they're lucky, are the problems. We know they're not the problem. The problem is that there are rich people, corporations in Britain that don't pay their dues. They don't pay their taxes. The rest of us have to work. The rest of us have to tighten our belts. And they get away with making profits, putting their profits before us. So we need to stay organised, we need to stay connected, because we know the racism coming from this Tory cabinet is going to be worse than we've seen previously. So I think some of you will already be on the Stand Up to Racism WhatsApp group. If you're not on it, I'd ask you to join. We need to stay organised. So there is a QR code going around. If people, I think there are a couple of people walking through the crowd. If you want to join the Stand Up to Racism WhatsApp group, please use that QR code, or come and see me and I can make sure I can get you on that group. Only a couple of, I think what it was, under a month ago, there was an immigration raid at a workplace, at a restaurant in Chorlton. Because of the organisation within the WhatsApp group, we could get into that area, we could go to Chorlton, and in less than an hour there were 100 people defending two people who were all just trying to earn a living in a restaurant in Chorlton, and we stopped that immigration raid. That goes to show that when we're organised, we can stop them. We can help people in our community, we can stand together. So I want people, I'm going to come through the crowd. If anybody's not part of the WhatsApp group, please come and see me and I'll get you on there. But I think Ron would like to say a few words. Ron?
Yeah, just be brief.
You know, we're told by the establishment about these highly trained police, and they're real sharpshooters. And they are. They can't seem to miss killing unarmed black men on our streets. They never miss. They shoot them down every time. How can you shoot somebody who has not got an arm? What kind of training is that? It's a training of divide and rule. They built an empire out of that. When we talk about Britishness, that is what they think it is. Divide and rule. Why else would we put up with a handful of very rich people exploiting and robbing the rest of us if we weren't divided? That's why unity is the most important thing for our movement. Black and white unite isn't a slogan. It's a practical guide for change. and we need change. The only real change comes from struggle. When we are united, we take to the streets, we go out on the strikes, we occupy the factories, we take over the streets of the Piccadilly and the rest. When we show our strength, then it will start to fear us, and that's what we want. We have got an interest in fighting for a better world. They want a world divided and racist. We want a world united, where we're all brothers and sisters. That's the only world that's worth fighting for. This is our world, and we're going to take it. Thank you.
Next one. Okay, I know there's lots of new people that have just joined, so it's great that you're here. I want to make it really clear why we're standing here today. So I'm going to say this. Say his name!
Chris Kaba!
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 Never forget, he's a 24-year-old man who was shot by the police. He was unarmed. His car was stopped. They didn't have a conversation with him. He didn't try to run away. They decided to shoot him on the spot. And that's why we're here. So it's great that we're here. We're going to continue coming out. I hope you're all on the WhatsApp group. We will let you know what's going on. Obviously, the family will see what's happened today across the country, and if they make a call to come out again, we'll be out on the streets again. But let's stay connected. Thank you very much, everybody. Black Lives Matter!
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 Thank you very much. Just quickly, you've got somebody who, as he's just told me, went past, saw the demo and decided to stand with us, but he wants to say a few words. And since it's his first time on one of our demos, I'd like to hand it over.
Can I just say, the thing on my back is today is my backpack. I'm a school student, I'm an A-level student, I'm 17 years old, stood here fighting an institution that has been racist for too long. Later on, when I go home when the sun sets, I'm going to be worrying about a police eyeing me up like I'm the murderer, when they're the one with blood on their hands. For too long, every single institution, the government, education, the police, all abhorrently racist to the Afro-Caribbean and Asian community. Yeah, and that's all I have to say, sorry. No justice! No racists!
Alright, thanks very much everybody. We'll see you all next time.
Okay, thanks for watching everyone. Smash like, share and subscribe. I'll be live at the next protest. Might be live again later today, I don't know. Depends whether that other protest is still going on or not. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.